All right, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marbella Muro. I'm the Director of Artistic Programs and Education at Self-Help Graphics and Art. I want to welcome everyone to the Artist Lab in the Studio virtual series. This program supports and promotes artists of color and seeks to maintain the creative community connected during this time of isolation. Before we continue, I want to acknowledge that Self-Help Graphics resides in Apachangna, currently known as the Los Angeles neighborhood of Boyle Heights, where the original peoples of this territory, the Tangwa, the Chumash, and the Tataviam, were first displaced. Further, on this somber celebration, I ask that we have a moment of silence to remember and acknowledge our ancestors' presence, loved ones, and the many lives that we've lost this year due to COVID and the ongoing systemic issues. For our special Day of the Dead edition of In the Studio, we've invited 4 of the artists featured in our exhibition, Ofrendas 2020, that's part of our larger celebration of Day of the Dead. We welcome Sandy Rodriguez, who is the curator and artist, Consuelo Flores, Rigo Maldonado, and Devon Tsuno. First, we'll have Sandy introduce herself and commence the presentation with an overview of the exhibition. Consuelo, Rigo, and Devon will then introduce themselves and talk about their work, and then we'll circle back to Sandy. In the last part of the program, we'll open it up to questions from the audience watching via YouTube. So I'm going to share my screen. And please don't look at my messy desktop. Here we go. So I'll just briefly mention that Self-Help Graphics, the Day of the Dead at Self-Help Graphics flourished as both a cultural practice from Mexico while also responding to political and social issues in Los Angeles affecting the community, the large number of Black and brown men going to Vietnam War and dying, as well as the community oppression and police brutality. So the political and social context has always been present in our exhibitions, and this is very much the case in Ofrendas 2020. So Sandy, when we first spoke about having you curate the exhibition, your mind was already addressing one of these major dominant issues affecting the country, and then it kind of, because of these different events that have occurred, it opened up to different topics. So if you can talk about the pathway of the exhibition.
Absolutely. So it is an honor to be here with you all. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to bring together such extraordinary artists as part of this exhibition. And as Marbella mentioned, when we had initially begun the conversation, the exhibition was certainly focused on immigration, the crisis at the border, and really thinking about migrant children, activists, and our loved ones. And as the year has developed in the way that it has, we have really had to come to terms with how do we celebrate and how do we come together and think about our ancestors and our loved ones during a global pandemic. When our communities are suffering the greatest losses, how do we create a space where social distancing is critical to keeping the infection rates and deaths across our county and country. How do we create this space? And so working together with self-help and with Marbella and Alexa, it has been a real joy to think about how do we create this exhibition. And so again, I'm honored to bring together these visionary groups of LA artists spanning generations, perspectives, disciplines, and the connections to self-help, one of the most important cultural arts organizations in the United States. So collectively, the vision is to have these 17 artists really think about creating ofrendas for our loved ones and for our ancestors, and to be reunited on these holiest of days, to find strength, to put one foot in front of another and keep fighting the fight that each of us are fighting for social justice and change in our communities to see the world that we want to live in. So it's with the support of our loved ones that we're able to prevail, as generations have in the past, to really solidify the connections and those personal commitments for, again, for those better years ahead. So I invited these artists to really meditate on the ritual and the history of Dia de los Muertos in Los Angeles, to experiment and reinterpret these traditional symbols and these elements for the dead, as we have for generations in this place we call home here in Los Angeles.
So I'll move or share the slides, and you can proceed from there, and just let me know if you'd like me to stop.
You got it. So in the first gallery, you're seeing a wonderful installation view of work that is really varied and beautifully installed by a range of artists. And so this will give you a nice broad view of the first gallery. We're able to fill both of the spaces. Next slide. In the first gallery space, we have a beautiful video and installation by Nao Bustamente called Mucho Mucho, and you can watch the video. And it's this beautiful ofrenda that Nao created. You also have the stunning work of Gabriela Sanchez, For Those Who Persisted, a very beautiful mixed media work that you can see in the slide, and certainly take a moment to go through the exhibition catalog to get the artist statements individually. I started working with the Young Center in my last exhibition, and so I invited them to really join us in creating an altar for children who died in border enforcement custody. And so you'll see that work on the one side, and then on the other side, Barbara Carrasco created this beautiful ofrenda called De-Link Children from ICE Abuse #1, and it includes both the painting as well as a small altar with collaboration from Linda Gamboa and Joel Mendoza. Additionally, we have the work of Enrique Castrejon, the memorial wreath to unidentified migrants who crossed the border. And again, please take a look at the exhibition catalog to see each one of these artist statements. But then there's also the Death's Unmeasurable Loneliness, measured in inches and calculated angles and degrees 2020, which is right next to it on the slide. We have the work of Isabel Luderud for Middle Passage 2020, and it's an installation of terracotta photographs and her altar. This is the wide view of the second gallery, so you get a sense of how the works are in dialogue in the space. And it's in this gallery that you'll find Shizu Saldamondo's When This Is All Over, which is made out of paper, wire, and a found chain link fence. You'll hear a little bit later in the program from Devon Tsuno about his gorgeous ofrenda, as well as Rigo Maldonado and Still I Rise. Irina Cervantes created a beautiful work on panel, Protectors of la Naturaleza Presente 2020, which is acrylic on wood. And Cristina Fernandez's contribution of United Untitled Farm Workers 1989 to 2020 is a stunning archival pigment print. Sandra de la Loza created Unicorn Ancestor, an homage to Ricardo Sapian de la Loza, 2020, in an illuminated tunnel book that is just beautiful. And again, take a look at the catalog to see artists' statements. That's in the same gallery as Carolyn Castaño's La Imprenta, in memory of Jairo Castaño, and you can see the video on the virtual presentation as well.
I'm just going to chime in, Sandy, just for people to see that Sandra's work, it's all paper, and it's just, you can't really have a sense, you don't have a sense through images, the depth and layers within the work. And with Caroline's work also, it's really beautiful because you hear the audio of the machine just running through.
Definitely. You have Consuelo's installation in the corner, and again, you'll hear from her a little bit later in our program. Audrey Chan created a nicho altar for Ama reciting poetry, which is a number of beautiful materials all brought together in this altar. So again, please take your time with going through the virtual exhibition online.
So thank you. One of the things that I saw throughout the exhibition were these very conjoined themes. Definitely detention centers, which is Devon's work and Shizu's work, Barbara Carrasco. The issue that immigration policies and the way we identify, or not identify, but we select individuals to blame, and the consequences of these policies. And so definitely with Shizu's work and Devon's work is a nod to or a reference to the Japanese Americans in internment camps, while at the same time we're dealing with these similar policies today. And then also which is really great, seeing contemporary altares to very traditional, that is like yours, Sandy, or the young centers. And the young centers, yes, it's another of the altares that addresses the deaths within the detention centers. So I'll pass this on to, do you want to provide any other comments?
No, I would like to say thank you to all of my artists. I have tremendous respect for each of the artists that are exhibiting in the exhibition, and I'm just thrilled to be able to share this with our local audience and our national audience via a virtual exhibition. So thank you all so much for making the time and committing your talents to this particular Ofrendas 2020. Thanks.
Yeah. Consuelo, we have your work here. It's titled The Roots of Our Resistance. And I know you have such a long history with self-help graphics, doing altares, both traditional and here very clearly a contemporary altar. It would be great if you talked a little bit about that before you go into talking about the specific work.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Consuelo Flores, and I have been part of the self-help graphics family since about 1981, when I was approximately 18, 19 years old. So it's been a long while that I have been involved with self-help graphics. I became, I was introduced to the celebration of the Day of the Dead by Sister Karen Bocalero. And even though a lot of people know her as a nun and think that that Day of the Dead is a religious holiday, it actually is not. And the first celebration that took place at Self-Help Graphics created publicly in 1972, there was a big give and take between, or push and pull between, Sister Karen Bocalero and some of the artists, because the artists wanted a religious ceremony to commemorate and honor the people who had died during the previous years that had been such years of unrest, of civil unrest. And Sister Karen really was very adamant about not having it be religious, because this particular celebration had no religious basis, not a Catholic basis. It was really an indigenous basis. So Sister Karen eventually adhered to the requests of the community, and decided that yes, to make the community, to help the community heal, they wanted to have a religious ceremony at the cemetery, and that's what they did. After that, there really wasn't a religious ceremony. It was mostly, it was basically artists. It was artists who did all of the work, who participated in several different activities and workshops, anything from face painting to paper people making. There was a whole workshop in the early 1980s where paper people were made. So you would outline on butcher paper the bodies of the children or whoever it was that was there to participate in the workshop, and then you would double it with butcher paper so that you can have a three-dimensional paper person. And it was very fun, and it was really wonderful, and you could decorate that paper person the way you wanted. At one point, one of the artists wanted to have that float up into the sky with helium balloons, but the paper person proved too heavy to float. So we just enjoyed having that. So I've been involved with self-help graphics for a long time. My role in the history of it was that in approximately 1988, between 1981 and 1987, there really wasn't a whole lot of Day of the Dead celebrations. And so in 1989, I asked Sister Karen if I could bring the Day of the Dead celebration back. And I booked the gallery at Self Help Graphics, and I included as well-established artists from Willie Hedon to Patsy Valdez to up-and-coming artists such as Yolanda Gonzalez, who was up-and-coming then, and who is now extremely well-known, and Alex Donis. So I really wanted the celebration to come back to the organization and to come back to the artists who really made it happen. And it was really my honor and my privilege to do that. And it has not stopped since then. So there was a few dry years there that it was not a huge celebration. It was just sort of acknowledged. But after 1989, it came back to its full form again. So that was one of my roles. I also was part of Self Help Graphics' staff at one point, as well as Self Help Graphics' board of directors. We also brought the paper fashion show in 1982 to Self Help Graphics. The paper fashion show was in line with the concept or the ideology behind the Day of the Dead celebration, meaning that it is very ephemeral, very, very immediate. And as it is being presented, it is being slowly, or in sometimes, as in the case of one paper fashion, was completely destroyed during that time. So
when
yes.
when the other going back to the exhibitions, were they all did you see a combination of traditional altares or slowly evolving to more contemporary, or has it always been a mix of both?
So that's an interesting observation, because I really do believe that Day of the Dead and altars specifically can be very fluid. It depends on what's going on in contemporary current events. For example, during the 1980s, there were a lot of altars dedicated to the AIDS victims, and some of the altars took the form of the AIDS quilt, because that was really the closest that the general population had to honoring on a public scale those people who had died from AIDS. So
Mhm.
oftentimes there would be quilts or pieces of quilts on an altar, and that was very, very appropriate. It was
Yeah.
appropriate for the time.
Yeah.
For example, other altars have included references to drugs or to gang violence. We
Yeah.
see references now to police brutality. Rigo's is a perfect example, which is extremely, I was, it really affected me on a visceral basis when I saw the completed piece, the completed installation. It was just so beautiful and so heart wrenching at the same time. But that, yes, you're absolutely right. It is a fluid celebration, and depending on how people die, especially if there is a mass murder, there I saw altars, for example, for the people in El Paso who were murdered by the white supremacists who drove
Mhm.
thousands of miles to go kill them.
Mhm.
I myself have made altars that are not typical. They, as the one that I have here at Self Help Graphics
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
I understand. I liken the installation and the artistic contribution or work as being a jazz musician. You really know the music. You know how to play each note as well as you can, and then you riff on it, and you still
Yeah.
maintain the conceptual feeling for it, but there is an interpretation that is allowed to the artist, especially if an artist like myself or Rigo, for example, know the roots of the celebration and really know about its history. It's not about doing a riff on something without really understanding what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to go because you also mentioned the the period where there was in the 90s where the altares reference the people dying of AIDS, and here we are with another pandemic, different obviously. If you can talk about the reference to the COVID victims, and specifically to the virus itself, and
well,
how
so
you used
so
that.
there are a couple of things that I want to call attention to.
Mhm.
It's been interesting to me that here we are, how many years later, and it's being bookended. This particular celebration, or the celebrations throughout the years, is being bookended by a disproportionate number of deaths within the Brown and Latino community. The first Day of the Dead celebration that Self Help Graphics did was to call attention to the disproportionate deaths of the Black and Brown Vietnam War soldiers that were going to war and coming back either were coming back in body bags, and there were only 20% of the soldiers were Black and brown, and yet a higher number than that were coming back in body bags. So there was a disproportionate mortality rate there. The same thing is happening here with COVID-19, with black and brown people being the disproportionate numbers of fatalities due to this virus. So what I have in this installation is it is an it's an upside down, or it's the roots. These trees, these branches look to me to represent roots. And so when I saw them, I thought, these are the roots. These are the roots of our people. These are where we come from. These are our legacy. These are our ancestors, but they're really not ancestors. They're our family. So I wanted to make sure that our family was acknowledged. Our families were acknowledged. And the people who are dying of COVID, by and large, Black and brown people, look like me. I identify with them. They are essential workers. They're first responders. They're people who are needing to work. They are oftentimes lacking in health insurance, and they are oftentimes living in households that have multiple generations. So when they bring the virus home, they bring it home to their entire families, and their entire families get infected. And I have known of entire families getting infected and 2 or 3 people dying in that family. So
Can you
that
talk
is
about
really
yeah?
important to me.
Can you talk about the little girl, which is the case
So
that you're talking about?
so the little girl that is right in the front, I chose to put her right in the front. She's a 5-year-old victim. Her name is Skylar Herbert. Her mother, Lavandria, is a police officer, and her father, Ebby Herbert, is a firefighter. They're from Detroit, Michigan, and they're both first responders who both contracted the COVID-19 virus and unknowingly brought it home and passed it on to their daughter. Now, Skylar was a bright and smart, beautiful, happy, and healthy little girl. She was 5 years old. She was hospitalized for 2 weeks, and during that time, her health fluctuated. People thought, oh, she's going to make it, she's healthy, and then she went back down. She would go up and down, from being close to normal to being very critical. And after 2 weeks, she developed what has been the case for a lot of children, an inflammation of the brain. And during that time, her body started to shut down and started to collapse. And she died on April 19th from COVID-19. And it was definitely complications that were unique to children that were not necessarily present in adults. And so again, no one knows how these things happen in terms of the COVID-19 virus. They're still not understanding it. But this little girl was a victim of that because her parents were essential workers and first responders.
Yeah. Do you want to share the flowers at the bottom, and also very critical, the spines of coyotes?
So well, first of all, the flowers that are going up, they are not balanced. And I did that on purpose. I put more on the left and less on the right. And I want people to look at that, knowing who I am as an altarista, knowing that I always do everything in balance. And I want people to understand that this is not balanced, just as the world is not balanced right now. It is an imbalanced installation on purpose. So the spines that are on the roots, those are actual vertebrae from coyotes, which coyotes are an animal that is native to this part of the country, and it got pushed out because of development. People didn't care about it, and so they killed it off, they pushed it out. And that's how I feel the essential workers who are essential to our livelihoods. They're getting pushed out because of development, because they are not really considered, they're considered disposable. So that is but these are actually vertebrae. This represents the backbone of our country, of our society, and that we are taking for granted. And I want to call attention to that because our backbone is essential. That means that these people should be given the honor, the respect, and the care that they need to make our society move forward. And then the last thing is that the flowers on the bottom, they're flowers that are I loved. I see them and they're tropical and they remind me of a paradise. And so the roots are going down to the paradise, which is Mictlan Tecuitli and this is my interpretation. There are three levels. The top is the flowers that are imbalanced. That's our society right now. The middle is the roots, which are the roots of our resistance. And the bottom is the paradise, which is where we're all heading to if we're lucky.
So very much the tears of an altar, a tradition.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. Exactly right.
Thank you, Consuelo.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. I'm going to.
And I just want to thank you, Sandy, so much. I love you. I love you. Thank you for having me too.
Okay, so we are going to pass it on to Rigo. First, we're going to show a video of an interview that Rigo did at Self Help Graphics to talk about this, his installation. And Rigo's work came about because of COVID. This work came together because of COVID, and it's a collaboration with his students. Rigo is a high school teacher. So we are going to listen to a video. Hopefully it works.
Oh. You're gonna have to go into the YouTube link, I think.
Ahí está.
There we go. So this exhibit is an installation I created for Self Help Graphics for their annual Day of the Dead show, and it's titled Still I Rise. And I want to say it's more of a collaboration piece between myself and my students. My process as an artist is that of collaboration, community, and coming together and trying to create some type of magic at the end of it. I think that the importance of having Day of the Dead altar is like, this is something that goes beyond a skull. This goes beyond something that you buy at Target or at Party City or at Walmart. It's about honoring. It's about telling these stories of all these people that we have here in the altar. Their stories stopped, but we will continue these stories and we will continue to honor them, whether it be through the arts or whether it be through our mouths or whether it be through our writings. It would be a way for them to continue these stories to honor their legacies. In this case, we chose the narrative base as a vehicle for them to work on and to create an installation with what was left behind from when the pandemic first hit. So in March 2020, our students were working on their narrative bases. And in this unit, narrative bases are used as a way to tell their story. And narrative bases in pottery have been used throughout many centuries to record this story, to record their words. And so as the pandemic hit, we had to kind of evacuate the school and we had to like pack everything up. We didn't know we were coming back in 2 days. We weren't sure we were gonna come back in 2 weeks or a month. But at the end of the day, we didn't return at all. And so what I was left with is 150 vases and they didn't finish their stories. And so my attempt to create this installation as an altar was to continue that story for them as a way for them to record this moment in time with the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement within our histories. The purpose of the totem pole is a lot of Native communities use it, especially in the Pacific Northwest, as a way to honor it. You can see some of the totems are plain white, no surface treatments. Then others are marked with these black ink marks, right? Some of them are have a more of an age look, but that was just more of my artistic interpretation of what was happening during the pandemic. Some days were darker than others. So what I want to do with the pots is each pot is an individual pot that one student created. So what I did is I created them into more of a statue, into a totem, so they all can connect their stories together. And then at the bottom of the installation, these are all the people that we lost during the pandemic and also through Black Lives Matter movement. And so whether it be personal, family, friends, to people that we saw in the news that we maybe never have met, but these are people that we want to honor as a community as well. I think this is a very pivotal point for a lot of communities to let their voices be heard. I just recently did a trip from New York to California to help my cousin move back. And in each major state, everybody's voice was amplified when what you saw on the streets, what you see the injustices happening throughout the nation, and you see these in murals, you see this in public artwork, you see this in toppling of monuments, and people are wanting to speak out, and they're using arts as a weapon and as also as a tool to educate others about what's going on in our communities, whether it be local or national. A lot of my students have gone away to universities, but they're really excited that they were able to present their work in a community space, such as South Help Graphics in Los Angeles. So here we have a lot of Santa Ana kids who probably have not even stepped foot in LA or yet alone South Help Graphics, but they're exhibiting here. So it's a milestone for them. It's something that's really important, that their voice does count and that it matters, and that we want to respect that they are able to create and yet tell that story. I think our hope is like that they are the voice of what's going to happen in the future, right? We're wanting to be able to give them the tools as educators, as like, you know, maybe you might not be great at this or at that, but here's a different tool that you can probably use to amplify your voice. This is a tool that you can use to help you heal, to help you to manifest what your dreams are. It's not all about just trauma and remembrance, but it's also as a way to look into the future, look as a thing of hope as well for our students. And so I'm just hoping that by them documenting these stories within their bases and using their hands, they're able to use that as a tool. My main philosophy as an educator is that you connect three things. You connect your head, you connect your heart, and your hands. And that with those three things connected, you're able to create magic.
Wow. With this video, that's a wrap, Rigo.
All right, I'm done. Thank you, everybody. Nice seeing everybody. Thank you.
I'm really glad that you shared this video with us. I think what I like well, there's two things as you were installing, and I was there when you were installing the show and you were playing around with placement, and you left kind of unsatisfied with when you first installed it, and then you came back and you just shared that your students were like, no, 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 you need more. Do you want to talk about that conversation with your students?
Yeah, that I wasn't being extra, which I agreed. I was trying to be minimalist, but I don't think I could ever be minimalist. I don't know. First of all, before I start, I want to dedicate this space to my abuelita who passed away last year. So the altar you see behind me is dedicated to my abuelita Carolina. And the altar I was going to make was going to be for her and my other abuelita and my grandparents. And we're going to have a family dinner table, and it's going to be some magic, and it's going to be great. And I told Sandy, I'm like, we're going to do this. But then the pandemic hit, and I'm like, no, my students have a story to tell as well. And so this is how the collaboration came about, is that when we were working on this, I mean, they don't know what they were doing. They were just like making a pot with the story they're going to put on, right? But then this is a time marker for them, right? So imagine being in high school and not being able to go to your prom, go to your graduation. Well, maybe forget the finals, right? Who cares about the finals? But all these milestones have been erased in their narratives, right? So what is a narrative now that we're going to be dealing with, right? Is this is going to be marking for them an important part of their own history of what's happening in their lives right now, right? But when I started installing it, the first initial response was just like, well, it's just like the totems. But prior to this, I was invited by my artist friend, Sarah Guerrero, who is a director for Breath of Art Latina, and she had space to do an altar at the Secret Storm Center in Orange County. And it's not likely that Latinos have access to these spaces. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of this, and we're going to take over this space, and we're going to make a beautiful altar installation. So I did a huge dinner table, and what you see are the backgrounds of the bright colored kind of arches are what was done for my previous students. They did them the year before. So this is a merging of 2 years worth of work of ceramic works where they made the plates. And then I was having conversations with my students. I'm like, what about if we stack these and we create these totems to tell our stories? And they're like, okay, that sounds cool. Being teenagers, everything's cool, right? So as I'm working in this process, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to glaze them. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I'm bringing in other people to help me create these things because we had limited time in my classroom. Like I had it from March, I had to wait till June, the end of June in order to get back to my classroom. I was not allowed. I had to like fill out this paperwork, like I was coronavirus free, all this stuff. It was just crazy, right? And we go into the classroom, and I have two other friends helping me out, and we're like, in one day we're like trying to put everything together because we're like we don't know how much time we have in the ceramics room, right? Yeah. So the result of this was I think my artistic interpretation was the actual coloring, because it was my frustration where some days are going to be darker than others during that pandemic, and we're still in a pandemic, right? Yeah. It's not all bright and cheery, right? And I wish it was, but this is the reality we're living in right now. And so the basis created 5 totems, and within those 5 totems, I hope to capture some of these students' memories and stories and just kind of their marker during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a little more about, since March, I'm assuming that there's been more of a like getting comfortable with the Zoom teaching and learning. Can you share some of that?
No, it's not comfortable at all. Okay, so as an educator, it's very, very difficult not having that connection with humans. When in my classroom, everybody loves my class because I create a safe space for all my students. Doesn't matter what background you're coming, but I use a therapeutic approach to arts, and I want to create that safe space so they can feel loved in my classroom, right? And so I'm not able to love through a screen, right? It's so hard. And especially if they don't turn on their cameras. Out of 180 students I have right now, only 2 of them turn on their cameras. Okay, so you're having this conversation. I'm looking at this screen. I'm looking at myself every single day now. I'm like, God, look at this wrinkle, and why did I get that zit, right? And so I'm over here having these conversations on the screen because I'm seeing myself every single day now.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that, but there's a disconnect because the material is not transferring over, and it's just like I see blank boxes with little names, boom, 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 right? And there's
the challenges at home too.
Yeah, we were so lucky in our district. I work in one of the poorest districts in Santa Ana. I mean, in all of Orange County, but there has been some. Our district has been very helpful in terms of providing laptops for all the students, Wi-Fi connectors, hotspots. There's even been a transportation services where they will take their buses out into different sections of the community to provide Wi-Fi access to our students.
Oh, wow.
But here we are with students who live 17 people deep in their house, right? We have another student who has to share a Wi-Fi connection with 7 other brothers and sisters, and they have 3 computers, and the Wi-Fi signals keeps them kicking them out. So it's a really tough year for all of us as educators, as students, just in general, right? In terms of education, they're not getting the education we would love to be, because like I think a lot of it comes from corazon, right? A lot of it comes from teaching and and for my class, I'm a ceramics teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I like to see my students fail because I want them to pick it up and recreate beauty within that failure, right? And so for me, it's okay to fail because you're going to learn from those mistakes. And so I can't see that, because now they're just showing me like, I'm done, here you go, even though they take process photos and stuff, I can only hope that they are getting the best of what they want from my class.
Yeah. Have they, or how do they access the materials? And has the process been somewhat, how has the process been for you as an artist? And then also giving all your energy in teaching with these youth? Well,
honestly, not all of it is really bad online, honestly, because it's like I'm able to go in deeper in some of the research. Right now, every Monday, I do a series called Meet the Artist, and I'm having the time now to introduce like Shizu Salamando, just different type of artists that they would probably never see, right? And I even have them do like, go on Instagram and look for this artist, or look for an artist that you wanted to showcase, whatever. And they have to write about it. They have to speak about the artist. So there's given me more opportunities for them to research and to look at things up. I've done virtual museum visits. We've gone to the Louvre. We've gone to the Brooklyn Museum. We've gone to everywhere. We've gone all around the world, right? Yeah, we've gone everywhere. And so what it's giving us access to is like stuff that I would never have done before.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the beauty about this, is that we are connecting in a different way, right? Maybe it's not what I want them to be doing at the same time. Like, honestly, I haven't even started ceramics yet, because it's like they just got their tools.
Yeah.
I was so fortunate enough that I did a call out to friends on Facebook, and like, instead of birthday gifts, I planned it out since June. I'm like, instead of birthday gifts, donate to my students. And I bought them all their own personal bag of ceramic tools, so they take home. And so
before you go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, and it's really cool that now they have access to their tools. Now they have clay. And I'm very flexible in terms of like, if you can't work during Zoom, because I'm not expecting you, then work on it when the internet's slower, or work on it at nighttime. I have students who can't even, they can turn on Zoom, but they can't really pay attention because they're taking care of their brothers and sisters, or they're helping them navigate this whole internet, right? So I am helping, I'm trying to be very lenient and be like, okay, well, come back to it. Some of my conversations when I do lessons are recorded, so go back to YouTube and check it out. So it's a blessing in disguise, but at the same time, I do miss that human interaction.
Yeah. One last question before we move on to Devon is do you think that there's a specific message that your students or the high school students would like, I think, the other generations to know about their experience? I mean, I'm not asking, like, as somebody who works so closely with them.
Mm-hmm. Oh God. I mean, I think what this is the best quote I've heard so far. It's like, if I promise not to ditch anymore, let's go back to school if I promise not to ditch anymore. And I'm like, right?
Yeah.
Or I promise I won't, because, prior to this, we were so, as educators, one of our toughest struggles is not necessarily that they're learning the material, but the competition between the cell phones.
Yeah.
Our students are very addicted to the phones. I'm not saying we're not, because we probably are too, right?
Yes.
And so that was our biggest struggle. So now this struggle has become like this tool, right? So it's really weird how everything's working out. But I think what my students, just from what they're talking about, is that they are really reflecting in a way that they're kind of taking inventory of their lives, and that their voice does matter as a young adult.
Yeah. Thank you, Rigo.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Sandy, and everybody. Yay.
A ver. Okay. And so now we're going to move on to Devon. This is an overall image of your installation, and it touches upon so many things, Devon. You reference Japanese internment camp. At the center of your installation, you have your beautiful grandmother who recently passed away, and you have this very personal altar that was in her home. And then you also have these linking from Rigo's conversation with and interactions with this high school students. Here you have 3 newsletters of high school students at the Japanese internment camps. So Devon, I'd like to invite you to talk about, the different symbols and different components of your altar.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's like such a huge honor to have an installation at Self Help, and I love hearing about the other pieces, and Rigo's such amazing work at at the school. I mean, I'm so appreciative. We should all, really take a step back and just be so thankful there's people like him taking care of our children right now. We're just so fortunate, So this piece that I did,
too.
huh?
Yourself too. You're an educator.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I give so much props to K through 12 teachers. I respect them so much. But yeah, this piece came out of some of those things. It was 2 summers ago. I was at JAM at a Fort Still protest with other Japanese Americans, and just people all over from LA came, and there were a lot of artists there, and we were protesting that against the idea that the government was going to incarcerate children again at Fort Still, which was a detention center for Japanese during World War II. And I went there, and it really kind of sparked something in me. I really felt like at that moment it was really important for me to play an active role in what was happening. And I think the way I thought I could do that most was really trying to understand my own family histories and connection to what the US government had done then to my family and what they're doing today to other people's families. So I got in my truck and I drove from LA the next morning to Topaz, Utah, where my family was incarcerated from 1942 to 1945. And I went and found in the desert the exact location that my family lived, in a barrack. I saw the smooth stones buried in the dirt to create a walkway to the front door that my grandfather had placed. And I photographed that space right when you would have walked into the barrack, and that's what the black and white image is. That's a wallpaper. It's behind me here, and also in the installation, it's actually like that piece of dirt right there. And You can see all the nails and broken pieces of glass and remnants from the barrack. So I created this kind of tile installation of that. And then I was really fortunate when I was there. I met a really amazing woman. Her name is Jane Beckwith, who has actually started the Topaz Museum. And she showed me the spot where my family lived, but also started telling me more about just the history of the camp, that there was an art school there, and also that there were high school and junior high school newspapers, and that young people had written their accounts of what they were thinking of while they were in camp, being a teenager, kind of similar things to what I hear Rigo talking about, just young people dealing with a lot of trauma, but also like young people just trying to be young people and teenagers. So these 3 documents there are just 3 samples of the writings of teenagers who were incarcerated. And the reason I was able to go through these documents was I did a residency at MOCA and worked with the MOCA Teen Group, which is a cohort of teenagers from all over Los Angeles. And I showed them all 200 something pages of the newspapers, and they read them, and I wanted to know what they thought was important for people to read as young people. So they selected these articles and shared them with the public. And I created a zine and an exhibition at Residency Art Gallery in Inglewood based on that. So that's what that writing is. And then above there is my grandmother. It was the last photo I took of her. She passed away last summer, shortly after I came back, and it was the last time she was dressed up. She was going to be honored for turning 101 by the Okinawa Club, and flowers kind of her on the wall have azaleas and camellias, which are highly associated Japanese American gardeners, which my family is, that was their trade after the war. And so she's kind of surrounded by that, honoring her husband and her family that she's going to be reunited with. And then also other Japanese Americans who were incarcerated who've recently passed away. And then to the right is the altar that was in her home, and it's called a butsudan, which is a traditional Japanese altar for people who passed away that Japanese folks and Japanese Americans have in their homes. And this particular altar she brought back from her island of Okinawa and had it in her home for many, many years. She lived in Jefferson Park since 1950, and my family is from LA, and I think so it was a real kind of honor to place that there and have it at Self-Help. I felt like that it really needed to be there. So the documents that are in the writing, you can access those, all 200 and something pages of them, thanks to the Japanese American Digitization Project. And I would invite you all to take a look and read those. I think they're really important right now for people to read. And the website is csujad.org. And it's housed at California State University, Dominguez Hills.
I have 2 questions. One, when you arrived and you were looking at the wall where I told you, okay, this is your spot, and you for a while you were staring like, okay, is it all? Is it just half of it, or is it all? Are you happy that it became bigger than that one area that you like said you kind of thought you were limited to?
I mean, I think the scale is nice.
Yeah.
Visually, I think it's nice, and it gives more room for everything. to connect together in different ways. But
Yeah.
yeah, like how it plays with the architecture of the space.
Yeah. No, it's beautifully installed.
Thank you.
I hearing you talk about the photograph you took of your grandmother, and you said you took this photograph when you returned. Is it from your trip to Topaz, Utah?
Mhm.
Was she, I guess, cognizant enough for you to have a conversation about that trip?
I'm really glad you asked that. Because I think that's such an important part of the photograph. Um, at the time that I took it, and for several years, she hasn't been able to communicate verbally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the challenging things as our loved ones get older is, keeping a connection with them without being able to have these long conversations that we're used to having with them. And I was honestly to take the photograph because, when you're older, it's harder to smile and things like that, and harder to acknowledge the person who's taking your photo. But I really love the photo because I feel like that's who she was, and I think that was beautiful. And even at 101, when she couldn't smile and she couldn't talk, I could look at her and and know that we were connecting.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was what was happening when I took that photo.
I never asked you, is this your mother's or father's mother?
So this is my mother's mother. So yeah.
And so did you have those conversations then with your mother about that trip? And
Oh, my entire family knows.
Mhm,
I was the first person from my family to go. So
mhm.
Topaz is actually the camp that my father's family was at,
I see.
and my mother's family was at Rower in Arkansas.
Okay.
And but it really was important, I think, just as a whole for both sides of my
Yeah,
family. I was
exactly.
the first person to go back to one of the camps either side was at, and I I felt like it also was important for my younger cousins and things like that. I think in this moment of time when Japanese Americans and especially young people are trying to find ways to work in solidarity, with those who shouldn't be incarcerated today, it's important that they remember these stories, and they also see that I'm a little bit older and I was brave enough to confront those stories. And I think
Mhm,
it's important that we talk about them. And a lot of Japanese Americans elders, they talk about the fact that they didn't have any allies when
mhm,
we were
mhm,
taken away. 100 and over 100,000 of us. So we really want to be there for others today and want to be vocal about it. And um, that's why I titled it Shikara ga Nai, which means
Yes.
it could be helped, which is a phrase that's been championed by Japanese Americans I would say, like, as a symbol of their perseverance to be able to live through that horrible moment in history and move forward from it. And I think it was really important for them to use that. It's a Japanese phrase.
Mhm.
Um, but I think for my generation and for generations to come, I think it means something different.
It's
And
so weird. It's funny that you say that because when I read it too, I understood it as something different.
yeah,
Yeah, as in like we cannot do anything about it, and so you just allow it to happen. Is that somewhat how you interpret it?
I think the English translation is challenging because
Mhm.
obviously things don't necessarily translate the same way in
Yeah.
English. But
Mhm.
I think that um, for them it meant more of perseverance, and for
Mm.
maybe for others it meant um, a passiveness of not doing anything. And
Mhm.
um, and I think it is a little bit of both, but I also think that it was important for them to be able to cope with such trauma in their lives to be able to move on. But I think for us and for a lot of younger people, we feel like what's happening today can be helped, and we're not going to sit around and wait and not say anything.
One last question I have is, I know every family, every individual is different in the way they process these different turbulent and what's the word? I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word. But these very turbulent episode in their lives, and I'm wondering how your family and deals with that history in the internment camp. Is it more like like, for example, some refugees refuse to go back to the country they fled for, all the experiences, these traumas, that's the word, the traumas they experienced. So within your family, is it like, I think you mentioned that you're the first to go back. So does your family talk about these traumatic period of the families, both families' histories, or is it something like we don't talk about?
My family talked about it. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't think they talked about it in detail all the time, but most Japanese American elders, they refer to it as camp.
Mhm.
And our government refers to it as like internment camps, but they really were concentration camps. And my grandfather, who Kyoko, my grandmother in the photograph, her husband, my mother told me from when she was very young, he always referred to them as concentration camps.
Mhm.
And I think in my mom's family's household, it was always very kind of referred to it as that. But yeah, I think it's always hard for them to talk about it. They
Mhm.
talk more about it in reference to things and time, but
Mhm.
as they got older, they definitely talked about it more and wanted to make sure that I had any questions I could ask. And I always wish I asked more, but
Yeah.
I'm learning about it now even more. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So with that, thank you so much, Devon, for sharing this installation with us. And I'm going to move on to Sandy. And so, speaking of our ancestors and those who recently passed, when Sandy, we talked about the exhibition. It was first we first had the conversation about the print and paying homage to your lovely mother who passed away last year. And I'd love for you to talk about your mother's painting that hangs left of the print you created. And I do want to share with the audience that because of the pandemic, this was our first print that we created with Sandy being not in the studio. And it was a lot of Zoom calls with Dewey, our master printer, and sending the first, like, a full artist proof and going a lot of back and forth. And what was essentially going to be a CMYK print ended up being about 8 to 10 layers.
It was dozens.
Yeah, so
I was working with self-help last spring when Marbella approached me and asked me to do the print. And I was working on a show that we were all kind of in the studio printing.
the Utopia Dystopia.
Yes. And so it was last spring. And so my mom's health was failing at the time. And I would come home and then go see her and talk about the experience of printing at the studio and working with you all. And she and I were very excited about having the opportunity to then invite her to come and do a print with self-help. And this is, the months right up to before she passed. And so when you had invited me to do the 47th annual commemorative print and co-curate the exhibition, it was a perfect moment to fulfill that conversation that she and I had about being able to really interpret one of her works with, self-help and create this print. So the print that was created, as you mentioned, was done completely remotely, because when we started talking about the exhibition, it was early March and we hadn't quite shut down. But by the time it came to actually producing the piece, Dewey Tafoya, who is an amazing printmaker and just wonderful to work with, and I had FaceTime printing sessions. And so he's in the studio, showing me the proofs. And it was, I want to say like 2 months of each week, just kind of like working on tests and trying to get the piece to where it turned out. And it is just gorgeous and saturated. And while it started as a CMYK, the experimentation that Dewey and I kind of worked on to get these translucent layers, the image that you see behind me is the painting that we were translating. And in 2002, my mom went on an intercambio as part of her graduate program at CSUN. And I got to tag along with Irene Cervantes and Lara Medina and Sybil Venegas, who wrote the introduction in our catalog. And we took a tour and did a panel and a presentation, and she and I did a performance at the Sindicato in San Miguel de Allende about how Halloween was taking over Dia de los Muertos. And it was this full performance piece where the souls were being lost, and she was playing the ancestor, and she couldn't find me. And it was this performance really kind of talking about the elements that you see in the print. So the candles in the background, in the panteon, in the cemetery, and the traditional elements that you find in altares in the cemetery in Pátzcuaro and in Tzoutzintzán in Michoacán. And so it was really exciting to get to take a small, it's like 15 by 15 inches painting that you see behind me and interpret it into a 25 by 22 inch beautiful print. And so I'm really honored to have been invited to create this piece for the 47th annual exhibition. And in the installation that you see on the left, I included a number of the Monarcas de Muerte. And Consuelo, Rigo, my mom, and myself, along with several other artists, for about, I don't know how many years, did these walking altares as part of a show at Trópico de Nopal. And she and I would get together for dinner and just sit there and brainstorm, like, what are we going to do this year? And that was the year that we did Monarcas de Muerte as a group of 4 female wrestlers, and we were versus our unnatural enemy, the INS. And so we came out in these full wrestling costumes and like battled an INS officer and threw him off into the crowd. And it was just part of coming together with her to collaborate on kind of this installation and to collaborate in this spirit for the 47th annual exhibition. So thank you so much for inviting me.
It's a really beautiful, it looks like the print you created it looks like a Polaroid of the painting. And I was there during the whole process, and just how it evolved, and the colors just were growing and changing and shifting gradually until we got to that perfect color purple. So I'm really grateful to have been part of that experience. So you have another work in this exhibition. Keep doing that.
So Marbella, is the print available for people to purchase?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, the print is available for purchase. It's an edition of 82. And you can purchase the print, an unframed print, on our website. It's selfhelpgraphics.com. And if you go to our shop link, and the print itself will be one of the highlighted prints, so you don't really have to search for it. It'll come up right away. So again, it's selfhelpgraphics.com, and it's available on our shop page. Yeah. And then, so we'll talk about the other altar, which is one of the two more traditional altares in the exhibition. And there's just so much in this work. It's a collaboration amongst the Rodriguez sister and the mother and the matriarch. So you have your mother's painting at the center, and then the altar came together with yourself and is it Elisa? Elisa, your sister's name is so royal, Elisa Rodriguez and Gibson.
And she also contributed an essay
Yes,
to the catalog.
and she did. Yes, she did. And the catalog is available for download from the exhibition page, which is selfhelpgraphics.com/Ofrendas 2020. So if you can talk about your altar and the different elements.
So as we were laying out the exhibition, really providing enough space for each ofrenda to really kind of have that breathing space. And when we were first thinking about the exhibition, we didn't know if we were going to be able to do time ticketing. But then as the COVID numbers continue to grow and as the pandemic persists, it became an opportunity to really make the entire exhibition a virtual exhibition, have a downloadable catalog, to be able to share it with educators and artists and the larger community then would have access to it just if you lived in Los Angeles or were coming through LA. When we were putting together kind of the maquette in terms of what was going to go where, and we finished, Marbella, he said, but we still have one wall for your mom. And I was like, wait, what? I thought my mom's and my piece were together in the print. And he said, no, she's one of the exhibiting artists. So what are you going to put in? And I was like, let me think about it. And as I'm like organizing, and many of us who are stuck at home are reorganizing and going through stuff, I moved a photo album, and the photo album fell, and a color copy of an exhibition announcement fell out of the thing. And it was that painting that you see in the center, Minapantla, which was created in 2005. And I was like, okay, Lupe, like, this is the piece that you want me to go get from storage. And so my parents had a house fire years ago. And so all of the art is in storage. And so it's this very densely packed art storage. And I went to the art storage with my sister. I said, look, mom's made it clear that she wants this painting for her piece for the ofrenda. And so we go to the storage, and out of all of the paintings that are stacked, and it's wall-to-wall paintings, this is the only one that is like facing out in that first area. So I pulled it out, and this is a piece that she created called Minapantla, which is that liminal in-between space. And in her studies at Cal Arts, she and I went to school together in the early 90s. Then she continued her studies at Northridge and really developed an entire series of work as a Chicana feminist, really coming into consciousness throughout her undergrad at Cal Arts and then through her graduate studies. And so I felt like it was the perfect piece for her to have as her ofrenda, and really allowed me to think about just kind of this in-between space that we're all living in at the moment. Mm-hmm. And so really featuring that as the kind of centerpiece. And ever since she started creating altars, which was starting during her time at Cal Arts, there was a number of strategies that she included in her altars that I was directed from beyond to integrate into her ofrenda, including the tlalchico that you see that's made out of various beans in the center, which is the umbilical cord to the realms, the celestial, terrestrial, and underworld. And then on the sides, you have a lot of photographs of the Mondragon and the Rodriguez. So I'm fourth generation Chicana painter. My great-grandmother was an embroidery artist. My grandmother's a painter. My grandfather was a painter. and we've been in Los Angeles for 105 years. So really having this artistic history within Los Angeles of educators and artists, and a family that just has such a layered kind of history here in LA. I felt it was what she wanted. And so I put this ofrenda together with her and my sister Elisa.
So just very, I guess for those who are joining us and may not know all the layers of an altar, can you just briefly walk us through of the major elements in an altar, which
Sure.
you definitely have in here?
Sure. And Guadalupe did a lot of really stunning altares over the years. And the last time my mom, myself, and my other sister, Rebecca Rodriguez, who's a photographer in San Francisco, collaborated on a Day of the Dead ofrenda for self-help. It was 2008.
Oh,
and
wow.
Rigo was in that show also.
Okay.
And the celestial window, which is the paper cempasúchil frame that you see around the painting, allows for the souls to enter this permeable space during these days during the holiday. So putting her Minapantla in the center allows for that window to be opened.
The pathway.
Yeah, so the cempasúchil is the orange flower, the marigold, which is the flower of the dead that guides the dead by smell. The candles are to be lit. If they're not lit, the dead will light their own fingers and consume themselves, and you will have no ancestors. So you keep the window, you keep the water, you keep the salt, you keep the food as for them to nourish themselves after that long trip. And especially just before this Zoom call, I was on a Zoom with all my family, we're a family of 8 with all their own households. And everybody was showing us their ofrendas for mom. And it was like, she's busy today, like making all the stops throughout the day.
Yeah.
But
the idea of like that, if you don't light the candle and the fingers will be burned. It's such a typical of, I'm gonna make you feel guilty kind of thing. Like they're your ancestors coming back to make you feel guilty. If you don't do this for me, this is what's gonna happen to me.
I think it's just like, why do we have to, keep the candles lit,
Yeah.
and why do we have to, do these, why do we do these things? Not have to, because we don't have to,
Yeah. So, Sandy, would you like to share anything else before we open it up to any questions? And by the way, viewers, we have also Lulu, who's engineering, in the background hiding. Lulu, well, go ahead, Sandy. Do you have any other things?
I was just going to say thank you all so much for coming together and sharing your extraordinary work as part of Ofrendas 2020. I'm absolutely thrilled to get to share this with everybody online and to keep our community safe and really be able to celebrate together. I think it's a perfect moment for questions.
Oh, so I'm sorry. There was a question, Rigo. If you can let us know who the people on the altar are. Let me go back to share my screen so I can go back to it.
And Rigo, you're mute.
A ver, si lo podemos hacer. Aquí estamos. So
That was a good interpretive explanation of all of this. So on the yellow background is one of my very dear friends from Palm Springs, lost his father. His name is, he's actually from Cathedral City, Zacarias Ruiz Avila. And then to the right is Brianna Taylor from Louisville, Kentucky. To the right of her is trans activist Lorena Borjas from Queens, New York, who would spend all her money to help other trans workers, and just an amazing asset to the New York community in Queens. Where else? Where are we going? To the right of that is a local from Santa Ana who died of COVID, Ismael Cervantes from Santa Ana. A ver, and George Floyd
Mhm.
Minneapolis. And then behind that was Jose Ramos Moreno from Santa Ana, who was one of the first cases that came out here in Santa Ana where the whole family was infected, and like he lost his life after a couple weeks.
I'm assuming that Santa Ana is also in Orange County, probably one of the highest affected.
It's the highest. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so is Boyle Heights and unincorporated East LA.
And
Yeah.
that is
Love
where
it.
the largest population of Latinos are, in Santa Ana and Orange County and Boyle Heights. So it does not at all surprise me. It is
Yeah.
why.
Lulu, do we have any other questions from the audience?
Right now, we don't have any questions, but we have a lot of praise for all of our artists featured here today. Thank you all for joining us. We've got a lot of love in the community for Rigo, Sandra, Mama Consuelo, and Devon too. Thank you all. We have one commenter saying that they really enjoy the explanation for all the multiple layers that are featured in an altar. They say that that's something that new that they've learned this round in this discussion.
Good. I know we're running a bit late. I think just a very quick, a few words. I have a question for all of you. If any surprises or what was it? So any surprises that you came across while creating your altares? Because for all of you, it was sort of you have an idea, but it was evolving as you were installing. So just very briefly, if you can share any surprises or the process and the experience that spiritual process that surprised you.
So for me, I think it's not so much it is and it isn't. Once it came about, it was like, oh yeah, that it makes sense. And that is that altars and the Day of the Dead this year has been much more impactful, much more significant. And I attribute that to the fact that all of the funerals this year, because of COVID, have been virtual. It's literally a drive-by funeral. I've attended 2 funerals that were virtual, and it leaves you feeling even more disconnected. So I think a lot of people have taken Day of the Dead, the celebration, and have really made the celebration their form of closure. It's a more tangible way to say goodbye to your loved ones than just having a virtual celebration. You are able to physically put together something that is meaningful and then have a physical and visceral and emotional closure to what that life represented to you. And so to me, the fact that so many people have come forth and said, and have asked me, how do I make an altar? I've not been able to, I didn't attend my so-and-so's funeral because it was surprising initially, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to share anything?
I want to say something about Consuelo's piece. Consuelo, I worked with Consuelo for many, many years. From the Hijas de Juarez exhibit we did to South Hop Graphics, many years. But when I saw your altar, I was like, I thought they were lungs. I didn't think they were roots. I thought it was like this giant lungs. I was like, oh my God, so profound. Like, like how the lungs are attacking with the COVID. And I was like, I thought Consuelo did it again, right? And it's always such a beautiful thing to see Consuelo do her work every single year. She's so dedicated, like one of the most dedicated persons I know when it comes to, I call her the queen of the Dia de los Muertos, right? And she calls me the queen too, but anyways, but like she is just like, whether it be for fashion or altars or just her written word, it's just so beautiful. So thank you so much for being part of this community. you know, and I think you need a lot more recognition because you have been such a staple in Los Angeles and in the world for your contributions. So thank you.
I love you, Rigo. I'll pay you later.
So if
We
anybody
do have
else-
one question from the
Yes.
audience.
Yes.
This comes from an educator at PCC. They want to know, what do you hope college students take away from this exhibit?
What do you hope? What?
What do you hope college students take away from this exhibit? What do you hope they learn from this exhibit and maybe bring into their own homes?
Well, that there's extraordinary talent in multiple generations of artists here in Los Angeles collaborating with self-help graphics, and that the way that we interpret and celebrate this holiday is very specific to LA, and that there are a number of very potent and powerful themes throughout the exhibition, and that there are as many ways of interpreting this event as there are people in Los Angeles. And it's important to continue to reinvent each year, because that is what we do. And yeah, anything else that anybody else would want to add to that?
oh, go ahead, Devon, please.
Yeah, I just think it's so important that college students see this work, because I think it's a really great example to show them that their stories are really important, that, you know, their families are really important. And, you know, when you're in college trying to become an artist, you try to reach for these examples of people in history books or in museums. And, you know, I think the people sitting in this room and their families make such powerful work and have done such powerful things within our community. And that's our history, and that's what's important. So I would encourage college students to make work about themselves and see that their lives and the people around them are so valuable. And even, I think right now, even more so, you know, with COVID, I think we need to learn how to mourn a little bit better in this country.
Just to write off on that is, I think the exhibition brings together such wonderful, strong artists, but further it demonstrates how important art is in the healing process. And you don't need to be in an exhibition to use art, but it's essential to include art as part of your, whether it's visual arts, music, any type of performing arts. It has been, is, and will be very essential in our healing process to address this what we're living with. With that said, I'd like to invite all of you artists to share your social media handles for our audience to go to your websites and learn more about you individually and to support you. So we'll start with Sandy.
You can go to studiosandyrodriguez.com and find me on Instagram at studio.sandyrodriguez.
Devon.
My Instagram is at Devon Tsuno Studio. And you can see examples of my work and more writing about my work at residencyart.com.
Consuelo.
So I have a Facebook under my name, Consuelo Flores, and an Instagram at Consuelo G Flores.
Y Rigo.
And Instagram, you can find me at 3vidas, THREE, and then vidas.
So you can see, again, visit our exhibition on our website, that's selfhelpgraphics.com/Ofrendas 2020. Again, you can see all of the exhibition, the individual works and details, and then download the exhibition where all of the artists have provided a statement about their works, as well as their social media handles are also listed on there. And then our entire Day of the Dead program is also available on our website at selfhelpgraphics.com/Dia de los Muertos. You can download a lot of educational components on their workshops and a zine that will show you how to do different workshops. And also, I want to invite, and then this will also be recorded on SHGTV if you'd like to share it. So that's on YouTube, SHGTV. And then finally, I invite everyone to, if you can, donate to Self-Help Graphics, purchase Sandy's print as well, for us to continue providing these types of programs to you all. And I would be ashamed if I did not encourage you all that if you haven't voted, please do so. You have, I think, less than 24 hours. It's very important. It's critical.
And I just
we're not talking about that right now.
No, we're just saying, let's vote.
Yes, let's vote. Please, let's vote.
We're focusing on voting. Muchas gracias a todos. And thank you all here for being here and being part of Self-Help Graphics. And thank you all thank you all artists who are part of the Ofrendas 2020, all 17 of you. You made this exhibition spectacular.
And thank you, Elon Schoenholtz, for photographing the exhibition.
Thank you, Elon. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Marbella and Betty. Thank you for everything. And then I'm just wanted to say I'm honored to be with Devon and Rigo, Sandy, and all of the other spectacular artists in this exhibit. So thank you all.